Mr. McKeach, I want to ask you a question. How will raising royalty rates and increasing the cost of domestic energy production benefit, quote, environmental justice communities?
That's not what this bill does. What this bill does is put environmental justice communities on the same par as other communities in your area. So if, so that they're not the target of cheap labor, so they're not the target of cheap property values.
Thank you, Mr. McKeachin. Mr. Chairman, does this bill raise royalty rates? Yeah, let the record reflect that the chairman's response just contradicted that of Mr. McKeachin. Mr. McKeachin, I'd urge you to read legislation that comes up before this committee, because the consequences of this legislation are profound. Mr. Carl's exactly right, and what his amendment does is it simply says that this bill will not be enacted. It will not have an adverse impact on communities. Look, I want to remind you, people all across America are paying over twice gasoline prices that they were when this administration came in. And look, let me give you a translation of what Senator Houma, what Senator Menendez, what Senator Cantwell, and what Senator Markey said about higher gasoline prices. They said that it's effectively a tax. That's how they described it. They said that the current run-up in world oil prices is effectively a tax on every American family's discretionary budget, except that the money goes to the OPEC cartel rather than the U.S. Treasury. Secondly, let's look at Secretary Yellen, Secretary of Treasury under the Biden administration, where she said, effectively, they were wrong. They made a mistake. Mr. Chairman, Mr. McKeachin, all that Mr. Carl's trying to do is prevent y'all from making more mistakes. Y'all's policies are the singular reason that we've got record energy prices right now. That's why. I said it earlier. You can't take credit for a 18-cent reduction, 20-cent reduction in gasoline prices, but then your policies aren't the cause of the doubling and tripling. Sorry, you can't pick and choose. You own it all. Mr. Carl is trying to save this country. He's trying to save the economy, and I got to remind you, the people that are most fragile, the people that are most delicate, the folks that are most affected by skyrocketing electricity and gasoline prices are the people that y'all are describing as environmental justice communities. So if you want people to pay higher gasoline prices, oppose his amendment. If you want people to pay higher electricity prices, if you're going to confirm or affirm that your policies in this bill are going to make it worse, then vote against his amendment. But just know that you're going to own it. You're going to continue to own it. Y'all's policies are the ones that are causing all these problems America's experiencing today. You know, you can say whatever you want. Under the previous administration, you actually saw lower unemployment in minority groups. You saw greater economic opportunity. You saw greater wage growth. And right now, just as Senator Houma described it, all you're doing is you're causing a greater tax. You're causing an elimination of income on the people that can least afford it. So if that's your goal, you did it. In fact, you know what? Good news. I think I got a "you did it" poster too. Look. I do. Look at that. You did it. Highest energy prices, highest electricity prices, highest gasoline prices. Like just own it. Just acknowledge it. And if I'm wrong, if Mr. Carl's wrong, then all you have to do is vote for his amendment, and the bill, it doesn't affect anything, right? It doesn't affect electricity prices, gasoline prices, so just vote for his amendment. Because y'all have all said that it's not going to cause adverse consequences. Just like Secretary Yellen said it, at least she has the nerve to come back and admit she was wrong. I respect her for that. Y'all keep doubling and tripling down on the very things that are pushing people into poverty and undermining the competitiveness of the U.S. economy. I commend Mr. Carl for his amendment. I urge adoption and yield back.
let me recognize myself, if I may, Mr. Graves, to yield for a question. In the litany of blame, Biden, the policies of the last year plus, this committee, me personally, inflation has gone up, gas prices has gone up, and that's where the blame is concentrated. Having not actually dealing with the substance of the amendment that I support, that Mr. McEachin, that I oppose, that Mr. Carl has brought forward. I'm just saying, where does oil and gas, the major corporations that made a $35 billion in profit in the first 3 months of this year, and which is 300% more than last year, and where do they fall in on the issue of rising gas prices and inflation? Are they part of the blame, or are they innocent?
That's a good question. You're yielding to me, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. That's a good question.
For a quick answer, because I got like 4 more questions.
Yeah, I can't wait. I'm excited. I appreciate the opportunity to dialogue on that. So, Mr. Chairman, what I would do is if I were you, I would actually call Brian Deese, who's the president's economic advisor. I would call the president of the United States himself, that both sent letters to the Federal Trade Commission asking him to investigate price gouging, that both came back with goose eggs.
I'm asking you. I'm asking your opinion. It's big oil, big gas, the $35 billion profit in 3 months. That has nothing to do with rising gas prices and nothing to do with inflation.
So, Mr. Chairman, whenever they lost billions of dollars over the past couple of years, where were you? So I mean, you have years where you lose, you have years where you gain. But to answer your question, the Federal Trade Commission is the federal agency with expertise and authority in this case. According to the investigation that they were asked to do 9 months ago, they came up with nothing, and I remind you that Secretary Granholm confirmed it.
So I can't answer for you, but I'm beginning to believe that you think that industry is innocent.
Yes, please speak for me. I'm just going to.
No, I'm just asking. I mean, that was a yes. I can't make it yes or no.
Mr. Chairman, I tend to prefer to operate with evidence. And an investigation that apparently has been underway for 9 months or even 10 months now by the Federal Trade Commission so far has resulted in no evidence indicating that there was price gouging. I remind you that these prices are actually going on around the world. And to quote President Biden, we're actually paying lower rates than the global community.
It was a futile effort, Mr. Graves, on my part to engage on what potentially could be some common ground. But if we don't include your perspective on who's to blame and our strong suspicion and perspective that big oil and big gas have played a big role in gouging and inflating the price and causing not all, but part of the inflation, then, that's the trouble with the middle ground. If you don't have one, but anyway.
Yeah. I think where we disagree is that I prefer to act on evidence, Mr. Chairman.
With that,
Mr. Chair.
path to nowhere. Anyway, the gentleman.